Hello and welcome to Wheelspin Media. My name is Josiah, and today I just wanted to take a little time and do a little 1-year review of my E63 AMG. I know there's probably people looking to buy these types of cars, old Mercedes or the 6.2 engine even. So I wanted to just go through my experience of having this for a little over a year. I put on 15,000 miles, which I wouldn't choose to do in a year, but I guess I've done a lot of driving, and usually I only put on about 10,000 miles. So I feel like I have pretty good experience with this car so far. So let's go through some of the stuff I've done, and there's also some stuff I need to do that we'll get into a little farther towards the end of the video. So stick around if you want to know how to go bankrupt by owning a Mercedes, and thanks for watching. All right, so starting off, here's the car. Pretty standard E63. It's a 2007. It's got some wheels that came on it from the guy I bought it from. I put on these eBay headlights because my other ones glazed over and were pretty gross in general. They still worked okay, but they just looked horrible. And so I decided to put these on. They were about 350 bucks, which I also just like the style, so I could have probably refurbished my originals, but I did like these more. They have some DRLs and kind of look a little fancier. So yeah, I mean, I did those. That definitely wasn't necessary, but it was something I kind of wanted to do. Like I said, the wheels were on already. They are aftermarket. They're Black Series replicas. Yeah, so I mean, this car, it was pretty good when I bought it. It had some nasty PPF on it, which I got that all off. It was just on the front of the hood. I don't know if you can kind of see the line where it used to be, but I got that peeled off, and that was just elbow grease and hours. And after those hours of peeling the PPF, I decided I should ceramic coat it. So I did a little bit of buffing, which there's still swirls and imperfections in the paint. It's an old car and the paint wasn't that great when I got it. Especially after peeling the PPF, there were some scratches and stuff, because it was kind of me just going to town on the PPF, trying to scrape it off with plastic razor blades and that kind of thing. But it is all ceramic coated, and that only cost me about 100 bucks because I did it myself. I got the Avalon King ceramic, which works really well, actually. I was surprised. It's only like a $75 bottle. But yeah, that's been working great. So that is another thing that really wasn't necessary, but I decided to do it since it protects the car. One more thing that was necessary was these rear tires. AMGs, if you own one, you know, but they just go through rear tires like crazy, especially this car. It's got a tune and a couple other little things. So it has a pretty good amount of torque, and so it just eats through those rear tires, especially if you drive like I tend to, which is a little fast. And you know, I like to give it the beans every once in a while, which is also good for the car. These motors like to be rang out a little bit. But yeah, I got these tires off Marketplace just to get me by for a little bit. And since I go through them so fast, I might as well. So I found a good deal on some Michelins on the rear, which the front tires are still the ones I bought the car with. The guy before me put them on, and they were like brand new when I got it. So the fact that I went through rears is kind of crazy already. But I did get about 10,000 miles out of the rears. But these ones are still going strong. But they are Sumitomos, which is why they obviously don't last as long as something like a Michelin. So that's something I had to do. But that's to be expected with any car. But Mercedes, they do go through them a little quicker. Like, to get a whole new set, I have Sumitomos on the front and Michelin on the back. I want to just get a whole set of Michelin or something nicer. And that way they at least match. But I'll probably wait a little while till these tires are fully worn out. But that will be a big expensive maintenance item. But that's on any car. They probably are a little more expensive for Mercedes, as the tires are a little wider and a little more sporty than like a Toyota Camry. So that's going to be one of the next things. And right inside of that is going to be brakes. And so this is going to be the big maintenance item next. You can see those rotors are just cooked and heat scorched and pretty worn down. So I will have to get those next, and I'm guessing that's going to be anywhere from $700 to $1,000 to do the front pads and rotors. I mean, hopefully a little less, but I'll see what I can do to find cheaper parts. And there are ways around it usually. I mean, of course, not going OEM helps a lot. So for brakes, I won't be going back to OEM as they're extremely expensive. I think they're about $800 just for rotors, and that's a piece. So probably about $2,500 all in, pads and rotors on the front if you go OEM. So hopefully I can cut that in half, and I mean, I should be easily able to cut it in half, and hopefully even half of it, if that makes any sense, which it probably doesn't. But I mean, if I could do front rotors and pads for about 800 bucks, that'd be a pretty good thing. So that is definitely the next thing, and that's a big gotcha on these cars, whether it's the C63, E63, or I mean, really any car, even the E55s, and all Mercedes of this generation pretty much have expensive brakes, especially AMG. You can see those are 3-pot pistons. So it's just extra expensive to get large pads and giant rotors for cars like this. So that's just another thing you've got to watch out for. But overall, I mean, you're not gonna have to do that too often. And I mean, you can find cheaper ways, as I was saying, especially not going OEM. So in the end, that's not gonna be a huge drawback on a car like this, especially if you know what to expect and what to look for. Now, the main thing I just did a few days ago was the valve covers. So I just got new gaskets, got those installed. It was leaking pretty bad, especially from the front cam adjuster cover. Those were pretty much original gaskets probably, so they were just dumping oil all over the engine bay. It would kind of work its way back down there. So I had to do those, and that has stopped the leak, which is great. So while I did the valve covers and cam adjuster cover gaskets, I decided to do fuel injectors, because that is one of the things you have to do as preventative maintenance on these cars, especially since I didn't know when mine were replaced, and it turned out they were original. So they were a little gunked up and kind of nasty. So I did those, and that was about $250. And so it was worth it because mine were original, like I said. So they were about due. And the other thing that I did while I was in there was spark plugs. I thought mine would be okay, but we pulled them and they were pretty dead. So I did those while we're in there as well. And that's kind of how Mercedes goes, is there's some stuff you should do while you're in there. And so it starts to add up. For example, while we were in there, found out this little radiator hose, actually this big radiator hose, had fallen down because this bracket had broken. So it rubbed on the pulley, and I had to get that done. And I do not have a place where I can dump coolant everywhere, so I took it to a shop. So the parts to fix that radiator hose were about $50 together for that bracket, as well as the hose itself. And then labor, I had it done at a shop, like I said, because I didn't want to dump coolant everywhere. So that cost me about $100 for them to do it and put some more coolant in, because obviously it loses some while you pull that hose. So about $150 to $175 all in to get that fixed, which is just a bummer, because if I'd caught that bracket was broken, it would have definitely saved me some time and money, since that part was like $20 on its own. So just got to watch out for stuff like that on any car. But overall, that wasn't too bad. It's just one of the things I noticed while changing the valve covers, which is good. I noticed it before it actually ruptured completely, because the pulley did dig like halfway through the hose, but it stayed just enough to keep it running and not spill coolant everywhere. And then once we found out, we did throw some zip ties around it and zip tie it up here to just hold it out of the way of the pulley, just to make it work. But once that's all said and done, it's good we found it while we were in there instead of waiting later for when it actually ruptured. So just another thing to know when you're working on cars and see issues like that. The other big gotcha that this engine's known for is the head bolts, and mine are original, but I don't really want to spend the money to get them fixed. And when you get them fixed, things can go wrong, like if they snap while you're trying to get them out or anything like that. And so the head bolt issue is hit or miss from everybody I've talked to. Sometimes they go bad super early and sometimes they don't. But running the right coolant is a big thing. And so the guy before me and myself run the right coolant. So the head bolts should not be a huge issue on here. And like I said, it's about 50-50. Some people say they're gonna just break in half as soon as you look at them. Other people say they'll be fine for a long time. So I'm willing to risk it for at least right now, but next time I go in, I will probably get those done. And it is quite a big job to get the whole engine pulled apart, basically pulling cams and all of that stuff to get to them. So until I need to do them, I probably won't, or until next time I go in, which hopefully will be a long time since I just did the gaskets. Other than those few things, this car's been pretty bulletproof in the engine department. These engines have notorious issues like the cams I mentioned and head bolts, but sometimes that can just get overblown on the internet and people make a big deal out of something that is hit or miss and doesn't really affect all cars. So it's not something you have to worry too much about, but sometimes it's best to just replace stuff while you're there. And there are, of course, a few things in the interior. This being an old Mercedes, there are, of course, electronic things that'll go wrong, which this car really hasn't had any electrical problems. There are, however, some issues with like speakers that like to unglue themselves. This one up here, pretty easy to get to. I just used some epoxy and redid it. There's also the subwoofer in the back, which is really hard to get to. You got to fold down the seats and all that stuff. And I just re-glued that as well. It's just like basically the paper on the bottom comes unglued, so pretty easy to fix. That one's really easy to get to in the front. The one in the back, the subwoofer, is not so easy. It takes the whole deck lid off, which also back there is the rear sunshade, which has a plastic motor that likes to strip, and mine has decided to do that. So that's the next thing I have to fix. On top of that is the plastic motor in the sunroof, which I have the panoramic sunroof. So that motor likes to strip as well, and mine is stripped. So I need to get that fixed at some point. But honestly, it's not a big hurry for me since I don't really care. I usually just drive with it closed anyway. I'm in California, so it's hot a lot of times here. So usually I'll just leave it closed. So that motor is usually about $400, I think, which I'd have to figure out if I can even install it myself. You kind of have to pull down the whole headliner, which would be a pain. So not sure if I want to do that. And the same goes for the rear sunshade. The motor's probably a lot cheaper. Can probably find a used one for like $100 or replace the gear inside. I've seen people do that for about 20 bucks. It's just the labor. And the same thing with the sunshade. I don't really care about it. So there's not really any point in me going back and doing it. I know I had the parcel shelf off, so I probably should have done it then. But once again, I just don't really care that much about a feature like that. So not really worth the time and effort. And the sunroof I will get done at some point, but it is a bit expensive. And as you'll see, there are other things that I can do with that money instead. And I don't really care that much, so I'm not in too big of a hurry. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching. Hopefully you found something helpful or entertaining in this video. And if you're looking to get a car like this, I would recommend it. Just be careful on how much maintenance has been done before, and how well the owner before you has taken care of it, because that is very important on a car like this. If you keep up on maintenance, it'll treat you right, and if you don't, it'll probably treat you wrong. But these cars are great fun, and I definitely recommend getting one if you have the opportunity and if it's something you're looking for. Whether it's an E55 or I used to own a C32 AMG. That was my first car and I love that as well. So if you like your AMGs, I promise these cars will not disappoint. They're great fun and they'll treat you right if you treat them right. Thanks again for watching, and remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to see more of anything, just leave it down in the comments, or if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks again. Have a good one.